Well, thanks so much for having me here today. I'm really excited to hear about some of the reasons why you guys are here, and I'll be here for the whole day, so excited to meet a lot of you. I would love to share my story about how I founded Project Futures and I guess what some of the steps, practical steps are in terms of how I started raising money, which is obviously a big thing for all not-for-profit charity organisations. And I really just want to delve into, I guess, the back-end story, and hopefully it'll inspire you in whatever journey or whatever part of the journey you're at. So here we go. Well, when I was 21, I was asked a question. A really good friend of mine was working for the Northcote Disability Service in Sydney, and she said to me, "Steph, I'm doing a bike ride across Cambodia. I'm doing a 500-kilometre bike ride across Cambodia. You're the only one of my friends that I kind of figured might do it with me. Will you come along?" And I was like, "Okay, what do we have to do?" She's like, "We have to raise $5,000 each." Now, I'd never fundraised before. I just finished my uni degree in marketing comms. I kind of figured, you know, I was someone that wasn't really afraid to ask for help or ask people for money. So I was like, yeah, I'll give it a go. It sounds like a great cause. I've never been to Cambodia. To be honest, the Cambodia, cycling through Cambodia thing was probably the biggest reason why I wanted to go. So I was like, you know what, let's do it. So we put our heads together. We actually collectively raised $14,000, which I was stoked about, for the Muscular Dystrophy Association. And off I went cycling through Cambodia. Who's been to Cambodia before? Anyone in the room? Yeah. Love Cambodia? Good place. I fell in love with the place. So I feel like I should work for Tourism Cambodia because I tell everyone that they need to go. Off we went cycling through this amazing country with 25 other people from around Australia who had raised money as well for the Muscular Dystrophy Association. And it was just the most amazing experience. Now, when I was there, I actually picked up a book. And it was a book by a woman called Somali Mam. So Somali was a woman that was sold into prostitution at a really young age in Cambodia. And her book sort of detailed her life as a child prostitute. And I kind of read this book from beginning to end, and I was just gobsmacked, like completely hit in the face by this book. And I think what it sounds weird saying you enjoyed it, but in terms of what I read and how I was reading this woman's story, I was gobsmacked about her life and what she'd went through, and I think she spoke very personally about her story throughout the book. But then what I loved was the hope and what she actually ended up accomplishing in the end. So this is a woman who was sold into trafficking, sold into prostitution at a very young age. She was, I think, about 35 or 40 by the time she wrote the actual book herself. And she had built 3 safe houses that rescue, rehabilitate, reintegrate and educate women and children in Cambodia that were being sold into the sex trade at that time. And what she found through that time where she was working in this sort of field, she was kind of the first woman in Cambodia that was literally picking girls up off the street, bringing them to her home, and then eventually trying to find funding to build these safe houses. So much so that she had quite a few accolades. Time magazine named her 100 most influential people of the world in 2009. She was one of Forbes' most powerful women in the Forbes 500 conference. She was backed by the Clinton Initiative, USAID, AusAid, countless of celebrity supporters and more. And so I was just super enthralled by her story and I was inspired by it. And I literally read it from cover to cover and I thought, man, I've got to do something to help this woman. And I was in Cambodia and I was meeting amazing people of Cambodia and I was just like, what can I do? And so I decided to do exactly what I was in Cambodia doing. I thought, I'm going to organise a bike ride. I mean, the trip for muscular dystrophy had raised something crazy like $400,000. Mind you, one guy raised like 300 grand on his own, which was pretty amazing. I thought my $7,000 was a great contribution, but when we sort of got together, collectively, the 25 of us had raised something crazy like $400,000. So I thought, well, why can't I do something like this for something that I'm passionate about, which was this woman's story? I gave myself sort of a year, and I said, I'm going to have a goal. I'm just going to have a goal of getting, I didn't even have a number. I said, I'm just going to get a couple of people to come along with me. I'll use the same model, get them to raise $5,000, and surely we can do something great for this women's organisation. And so I organised this cycle challenge. At the end of 1 year, 21 people joined me, and these 21 people were a lot of randoms. I mean, there was one point where I thought, geez, I'm going to be cycling through Cambodia myself. Not even my sister would come along with me at that time. I was like, just someone join me. Come on. I was just asking anyone that I thought was interested in cycling, interested in travelling, interested in charity. I was like, someone come with me. And then, by the end of the year, we had 21 people, the power of social media and Facebook. A lot of people had heard about Somali Mum as well, heard her story or read her story, and we had 21 people come along. And that 21 people equaled $80,000. And that was an amazing goal. We didn't have a goal in mind of how much money we wanted to raise, but we were like, let's just do something. And so we were lucky enough to go to Cambodia that year with the same cycle group, 21 of us. We raised $80,000, we were stoked. And the most incredible thing was we actually got to see the work being done in Cambodia to support these women and girls that were in Somali centres. So we actually got to visit 2 of Somali Mum's centres. We got to spend International Women's Day with one of the centres because it was the 8th of March, which was just coincidental. And I actually got to meet Somali Mum for the first time there. And it was just an incredible experience. We kind of got to see the first-hand work being done in terms of vocational training, education, just even the rehabilitation and their psychological support. It was very touching. And so I guess I came back from this experience to Sydney and I was a bit like, I thought, to be honest, before I did this, there were times when I thought, geez, this is really frustrating me in that year of trying to get people on board, trying to fundraise again. There was obviously times where I was just like, this is just so frustrating. I'm just going to stop it. Like, I don't have to do this. I'm working full time, like whatever. So obviously those times come and go. But once we got to the end of it and once we saw and actually met firsthand the people that our funds raised were going to support, there was just a part of me that just couldn't let that go. And so I guess I call this key number 1. So I'm talking about for me, finding your purpose and unlocking your purpose is a big reason as to why I do what I do every day. And so the first, I guess, key that I found in unlocking your purpose for whatever it is that you're doing in your own life, you have to have it awakened. You have to kind of go, holy crap, this is something that I'm literally going to do either for the rest of my life or I'm going to have some sort of involvement, whatever that is. It could be small, it could be big, whatever. For me, meeting those girls and meeting a girl like this girl, Lithia, was something just, I mean, she's still so much in my heart. I saw her a couple of months ago when I was in Cambodia, and to see how much she's flourished in 6 years of us running Project Futures and supporting her has been phenomenal. Now, I'll tell you a bit about Lithia's story, and you might understand why my purpose was so awakened by meeting these people. But Lithia was 16 when I met her. Now, I found out that she was actually sold from Vietnam to Cambodia when she was 10 years old by her auntie. She's never met her mum, her parents. She always lived with her auntie, and her auntie sold her into a brothel, and she literally went from brothel to brothel to brothel in Cambodia. She couldn't even speak the language because she was Vietnamese. For 3 years until Somali's rescue team basically raided the brothel that she was in and she was rescued. And so she'd been in Somali centres for 3 years before I had met her when she was 16, and she kind of spoke this kind of broken English. She was very beautifully calm. I'm quite, like, you can kind of see I get excited really easily. She was very calm, and I kind of sat next to her and she was just like, hello, and I was like, hello. I was like, so, what's your name? Lithia. Cool, what do you want to do? How old are you? 16. Oh, what are you studying? I'm in school. Your English is quite good. And she's like, well, I want to be a writer. And I was like, that's fantastic. What do you want to write about? And she's like, I'd like to be a journalist. And she loves to read and she loves to write. And I was just like, well, you have to just keep going. Your English has to get better. But phenomenal. And obviously, I don't ask about personal stories. So we just kind of left it at that. And we were just kind of playing around and having a chat. And Lithia wanted to be a journalist. She's actually now, this is a great sort of ending to her story, even though it's not ended yet. She lives on her own now in Phnom Penh. She's still in, she's in year 12 because she sort of didn't have fantastic literacy skills at that time, but she's in year 12. She's like number 2 in her class apparently, and she's going to be supported in going to university as a journalist next year, or to study journalism next year, which is amazing. But her English is phenomenal. She could sit here and sort of tell you her story or talk about whatever she wants to talk about, just like I'm talking to you. And that took a long time. So 6 years of constant support, psychological trauma, obviously, and education for Lithia. So for me, my purpose was sort of awakened just by sitting there and talking to this girl and seeing like the 200 or so women and children that we had just met. And I came back to Sydney and I had this sort of like burning desire. I was like, geez, I can't just not do anything. To be honest, I thought this was going to be my good deed until I turned 30. I was like, I don't have to do anything. I've just raised $80,000 collectively. I don't have to do anything until I'm 30. I can just go back to marketing and communications. I have a background in marketing comms. I was working full-time in the for-profit world in marketing comms. And I literally thought this bike ride was going to be my one good deed. And then I met Lithia and I met all of those girls and I was just like, oh, now what am I going to do? So I came back to Australia. I had this burning desire to scream about this injustice. And so I harnessed my skills and my talents and my abilities into starting Project Futures. And I didn't do it on my own, mind you. Project Futures was really born out of this vision to try and get young people. At the time I was 22, I think 22, 23. It was about trying to get young people my age to actually give back in time, skills and talents and collectively bring about change to the issue of human trafficking. It wasn't about raising all this money. It wasn't actually about anything to do with that. It was just purely about raising awareness, and by raising awareness, we would raise funding to support the work in Cambodia. Now, we didn't really have any goals as well when we started, and no one was working full-time at Project Futures. Project Futures was actually been running for 6 years. It was run for 4 years voluntarily, 100% voluntarily, and I came on board as the first full-time paid employee in April 2013. So after we'd built up quite a significant track record, but that was a choice of ours. I was working full-time in marketing and comms still. I still wanted to stick to that for-profit side. But then we used to create events and campaigns and all sorts of fun ways to get young people engaged in this issue of human trafficking. I guess, and that brings me to the second key around unlocking purpose, and that's to activate. There's no point awakening your purpose if you don't actually take action on it. And so for me, Project Futures was a way that I could take action in my everyday life for an issue that I was really passionate about, which was human trafficking and modern day slavery. And I'll show you a quick video which also encompasses Lithia's story around what the whole vision of Project Futures was. Oh, okay, the video's in the next one. But it was about being resourceful as well. And you'll see this in the video. It was about asking your networks and getting your networks involved in what you were doing. I was great at marketing comms, but there is no way I could design and create a great PowerPoint. So I needed people in graphic design. I couldn't design and create my own website, so we needed web developers. I couldn't do videos or animation, so we needed those guys. We obviously had a board from the very beginning, because you need to if you're starting a not-for-profit. It's mandatory that you have to have a board of directors. So we made sure that our board of directors we had an accountant, so we had the numbers people, we had a lawyer, so we had the legal aspect, two things of which I have no idea about, so you have to get people that are experts in that field. We had an investment banker and a networking guy who knew just everyone in the community, and I had my ex-director of marketing and comms from Australian Catholic University who could help me develop the skills that I needed in marketing and comms. And so it was about being resourceful, and literally a lot of these people were my friends' parents who had had successful businesses or were in successful points in their lives, and they understood the vision, they wanted to get involved, and also a lot of people hadn't heard about the issue of human trafficking and slavery in such a way before, in Sydney at least, where I was from. So this is just a video that encapsulates what Project Futures is all about. about being able to harness the skills, talents and abilities of young people at that time. We don't just box it into young people now because there are so many more in our demographics and networks. But at that time, it was really about trying to turn the idea of charity to be a little bit cool, so young people would actually want to get involved in it as opposed to they just feel like they need to do something. And I guess part of activation, there are two sort of key takeaways I have around activation. If you don't ask, you don't get. At the very beginning, I was asking every man and his dog to help me out. That video that you saw was created 100% for free. I had a friend who was a script writer and a content writer. I had a friend who was a graphic designer and animator. I had a friend who even did that music composition for us originally. And so it was just about trying to get the networks around you and asking them for help. I was the driver. I was definitely the driver. I was the one that sort of kept everyone in check. And maybe you could call it the project manager. But certainly when you see sort of, weeks of hard work and sort of that creative brainstorm of what you need to get out there and to share with people around the world, or the messages that you want to bring, to kind of then get the end result, whether it's a video or whether it's a great event or whether it's a school's presentation or whatever it might be, was a great thing. So I would definitely say for all of you guys that might be just starting, make sure if you don't ask, you don't get. In this day and age, social media, knowing your networks and being able to utilise those networks really well is a great thing. And the second one is ask forgiveness, not permission. So when I started Project Futures, it was all about just going ahead and doing it. The first time we did that first bike ride, I wasn't registered as a charity. I didn't have a fundraising license. I know if the ATO knew this, and I know this is getting filmed, I might get fined, I don't know. But at the end of the day, it was all done for a good cause. And then obviously after that one episode, I was like, okay, we need to get our shit together. And so, we have all of those things now, but the whole point is, just do it. You have to ask forgiveness, not permission, if you want to do something and if you want to get ahead of the game and if you want to, if you really have that passion and desire to make your cause heard, just go for it. And, for me, it's all about, if you've got the good intentions and all of that sort of stuff, things will happen. But I mean, I give you that example, which I hate to say, but, when I first started raising that 80 grand, we didn't do it, I wouldn't say we did it illegally, but because we were raising money for a charity that was outside of Australia, and our friends were the ones giving us money and so forth, and that money went to them, but we didn't have a fundraising license. We weren't even registered as a charity. And then obviously after that, when we started Project Futures, we made sure we did all the right checks and balances and all of that. We did these great international challenges. Part of trying to get people active and involved was we did that bike ride every single year. This year, we're doing 4 of them. So we went from 1 a year, we did 3 in 2012, 4 this year, and we're doing 5 next year, and we're expanding out to 5 different countries. So it was about keeping people engaged. We know that probably the majority of people want to go to Cambodia, or we're going to Japan next year, we're going to go to Burma as well. But we want them to holiday for a purpose, so they have to fundraise on top of that. And you get to meet these great groups of like-minded people, and majority of the people that do our challenges and our bike rides, they are the ones that are return supporters. They're the ones that are at every single event that we do. They're the ones that are fundraising through their networks constantly because they know that this is an issue for them that has unlocked their passion and purpose as well. So then the third key, after sort of you activate and after a couple of years of just getting your friends involved and your networks involved, you only have so many friends and so many networks you can ask, you need to mobilise past that. If you really want to get out into a state or national, international level, you've got to mobilise people. And for us, we did that by kind of branding ourselves as this, young generation of, we wanted to call ourselves young philanthropists, and this idea of young philanthropists. Because sometimes when you think about philanthropists or philanthropy, I don't know who you think about, but I think about Bill Gates, Oprah Winfrey, Brad and Angelina. I think about those sort of untouchable people up here that have a lot of money, they've done their dues, they're sort of actors and actresses and they're glamorous Hollywood or really, really rich people. But I was like, I'm a philanthropist, and I think my friends are philanthropists. They're giving back in skills and talents that are creating millions of dollars. Over 6 years, we've raised over $3.1 million. And in the last financial year alone, our networks raised over $1 million just in 1 year. That for us was such a huge win. And majority of that funding, may I say, isn't from, big corporates or isn't from sort of high net worth philanthropists. These are from, you know, buying a $30 bow tie on our website, coming to a $45 party, coming to a $200 black tie ball, coming to a $22 movie night. You know, you name it, these kind of events were what we were creating to create this collective group of people that we wanted to call young philanthropists. And so it was all about creating this new generation, and that's how we branded ourselves. And a lot of people affiliated with that, not just in Sydney, but in Melbourne, Canberra, and across Australia. And it was also about creating campaigns that were a little bit different. So we're actually in the middle of our 5th year of our Stella Fella campaign. Now, the issue of human trafficking, particularly sexual slavery, is very much, in Australia at least, and across the world where I've been, it's forwarded by women. And that's a great thing. Power to us, I say. It's a fantastic thing. We want to be empowered. We want to be leaders. We want to be able to showcase that we're passionate about this. And I remember going to these conferences, and these conferences around anti-human trafficking, slavery, whatever, and it was like 99% women, and then there were like 3 guys in the back that really want to get involved, but they're kind of scared to put their hand up or they're scared to say something. And so we created this campaign called Stella Fella. And it was all about trying to get more men involved and engaged in our cause. A cause that very much focuses on women and children. But we know that if we don't end the demand for sexual slavery, we just posted on our Facebook this morning this horrendous article in the Sydney Morning Herald around Australian sex tourists and Australian men that go over to the Philippines, Cambodia, Thailand, and pay for these sort of sexual services that inadvertently lead to child sex trafficking and prostitution of younger and younger girls. And so it was all about trying to, I guess, recognise these really great male role models in the community who want to stand up and give back to a cause. And bow ties were our sort of symbol of chivalry. And so we created this really great video as well to mobilise celebrity ambassadors to get involved in what we do.
With a heart on your sleeve and a spring in your step.
With a glint in your eye and a bow on your neck.
With the world at your feet and a friend by your side.
With all of your passion and nothing to hide. No matter your place, no matter your past.
When you walk in our tribe, you never come last.
It's 5 years in the making. We've come a long way.
But we need your help, as there's so much more to say.
Stella Fella is a movement, a noble way of living. It's not just about money, it's not just about giving.
It's about taking a stand and screaming out loud.
It's about being a man and making us proud.
It's about love and respect, dignity and devotion.
It's about causing a stir and setting the wheels in motion.
It's time to step up, don't be shy.
It's time to be bold.
Don a bow tie.
And for us, that donning a bow tie, we sell these bow ties as a way that we raise money, and you can buy one on our shop. But it's all about trying to raise money for a safe house that we actually support in Sydney that's run by the Salvation Army. And who would have known that human trafficking and slavery actually exist in our backyard today? Who would have known that? For me, it was just all about Cambodia. But once we started to be in the media a little bit more, once we started to put our hand out to get celebrity ambassador support and other support, we actually had Australian-based organisations coming to us going, do you know that this is an issue here? We know you're funding raising for Cambodia and that's fantastic, but why don't you support an Australian-based charity? And we started to hear some horrific stats around what is going on in our backyard in Australia around human trafficking, not just sexual slavery, but labour trafficking, domestic trafficking, construction, agriculture, you name it. And the Safe House actually in Sydney is the only safe house of its kind that directly supports women. It's a women-only safe house who have been trafficked into Australia for the purposes of exploitation. And so Stella Fella was a great way to really get out into a bigger audience around that. Another way to mobilise was what we have called a DIY project. So we have these projects called DIYs where you can download a DIY kit online, and wherever you are in the world or in Australia, you can actually be an ambassador for us. So we had to find ways to get out to a wider audience. That's around mobilisation. And so the fourth key, everything's going really well, you're active, you've unlocked your purpose, you're active on it, and then you mobilise people, and then obviously come the roadblocks. And the roadblocks will come. I'm so sorry, but they will come. For me, they came in the 5th year when we basically had this front page story about Somali mum that was actually dragged across newspapers worldwide. And it basically questioned whether her story that she was a child prostitute was real or not. So you can imagine how I felt about this. We had just at that point maybe raised over $2 million, $2.5 million. Not just for Cambodia, we were obviously supporting Australian-based projects as well. But this front page news story was just splashed across Newsweek, which was quite a salacious magazine anyway in America, but then it was reposted by the Huffington Post, by Sydney Morning Herald, by The Age, by the Brisbane Times, and it was just mayhem. And for us, it was quite hard to kind of figure out where this came from. And basically, I can tell you the story through the day because we don't have enough time here, but we had to make sure, I know that there's be authentic and back yourself. For me, Somali actually had loads of support all around the world. Much of that support actually went, obviously, reputational risk. Even our board, when we had a big emergency board meeting about this, our board was like, okay, we need to drop her. Clearly, she's made worldwide headlines. And I was like, whoa, 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 hang on a second. We've been to Cambodia. We've seen that work, and we constantly have been over there. I've been over there about 25 times in the last 6 years. You cannot tell me that we're just going to drop support because of one woman's story. And who cares? If she was a real prostitute, if she was a fake prostitute, look at the actual work that she's done over the years. And because my background was in, I guess, marketing, comms and media, I couldn't believe that this one story that basically questioned was she a real prostitute or not. I didn't really give a shit. And so for us, it was about being authentic and backing ourselves. I made sure we had a vote on it, but I was quite adamant with our board around really taking the time to look at this, not just making a snap judgment to basically stop supporting them. Because at that time, they had 171 women and girls in their care being supported, and every single corporate sponsor just didn't care about that. And for us, we had been more than just a corporate donor. We had been engaged with them. We had supported them year on year. We had gone on the ground with our bike rides and personally on due diligence trips going to actually see the work that was going on. And so I think this is a really big one. When you come through the hard roadblocks, you need to make sure you've got to be authentic and back yourself. And I had to stand up to my board and say that. And in my back pocket, I literally had, this was quite a big one, but I literally had in my back pocket, if I had to use it and I didn't, and some of the board members do know this, but I basically was going to quit. If they said, we're going to stop supporting her, I was like, well, that's the end of me. You can find yourself a new CEO, because I do not think that is the right thing to do. If we are in this for the right reasons, who cares about what a media report says? And I'm happy to say that Somalia at this point is still running. She has dropped in operations, but they still do have 2 safe houses open at the moment that we are backing at a 100% level. And so the last key to unlocking is you obviously have to reflect and celebrate. I don't do this enough. I get really caught up with all the day things. I'm sure you guys will too, as founders or as people that are on boards and so forth. You have to reflect and celebrate. You have to reflect and celebrate your wins, and you have to reflect and celebrate when, I guess there are losses, but you move through those losses in a really great way. And I guess you always have to remember why you're doing it. And for me, that definitely always stuck. With this issue around human trafficking and slavery, it is still an issue that exists, regardless about one woman's story. It is an issue that is growing. It is the 3rd largest organised crime in the world. 29.8 million people enslaved in our world today in various industries. Like the stats are obvious. They're obvious, and we're one organisation doing our one small part, but I believe we're making a really big difference, particularly in Cambodia and Australia, where we support projects that are part of this issue. And so I guess in terms of unlocking, you've got to awaken your purpose, you've got to activate and take action on them. You have to mobilise to go outside of your own networks. There will be roadblocks, but you will get past them. And once you get past them, you've got to make sure you reflect and celebrate. And I think that allows you to unlock your purpose. And you might have different purposes throughout your own lives. For me, this is one of them. The other one that I've sort of started to really talk about and kind of look into a little bit more is this idea of good corporate social responsibility. That's something that I'm super passionate about, and we're doing a lot of really interesting and innovative things in that area with companies. But you do, I feel, if you're going to follow your bliss and follow your passion, whatever it is, whatever in this room that is, you've got to make sure that you unlock your purpose. And when you find that purpose and you find that passion, I think that will not only give you that fuel to continue through the roadblocks and continue through some of the issues that happen when you first start off an organisation, but it'll allow you to grow, be innovative, network, and I guess go out there and really showcase your cause or your issue or your passion to the world, regardless of what's standing in your way. And so thank you very much.